Welcome to Imarol Tutorial. Aihak isamak Marina Kumantan. Ngasi Class 8 NCERT English Textbook HoneyDew gi ihan hanba chapter The Best Christmas Present in the World. Masigi samlapa wari adu khaminasi. Roll top decks haiba table makhal ama ayibana poti potkum yonba dukan amadagi table amanba ama lairaga semlubada chithi ama thengaki. Christmas hayengni haiba numit adudani. Chithi adu parubada Jim McPherson haiba lanmi amana 1914 gi British ka German ga gi lal marakta mahaki loinabi konida iba oirami. Jim McPherson hairiba asi England Army gi leader ama oirami. Chithi aduda mahakna lal manung aduda Christmas ki numitta German lanmi singa santi oina Christmas celebrate tawkhibagi ngakningai oiraba thodok adu konida tamlami. Aibana chithi adu koni hariba nupi asida khutsinna ninglami. Chithi aduda iriba address aduda lakpada yum adu khanghaudana maina chakraba oirami nupi aduna nursing home amada lairami. Mapuroiba ngaibada chahi chamaga amma surabi wakhalabi koni mahakna aibabu magi halakhidraba mapuroibani haina ninglami. Maduda aibabu konina haraumanduna malemda khwaidagi faraba Christmas ki khudolni haikibagi warini. Wari asida aibana maru oina fongdok ninglibadi lal kanna soknariba marak aduda Christmas numit adumadi yegnabani hairiba German gi England gi army punna Christmas celebrate tawminaki. Masina utli lal haibasi miyoiba amatana pamde. Yegnabani haina thawai khupak tahatuna hatoknariba maikai animakta makhoi gi pukningdadi santi pami magi imunga nungaina laiminabadu pami. Wari asi kupna amuk nainarasi. The best Christmas present in the world. Malemda khwaidagi faraba Christmas ki khudol. Before you read, padringai gi mamangda aikhoi wakhal khara khansi. There are some dates or periods of time in the history of the world that are so significant that everyone knows and remembers them. Malemgi itihasta aduki matik maru oiduna mipum khudingmakna khangnaduna amadi ningsingduna laiba tarik natraga matam khara lai. The story you will read mentions one such date and event, a war between the British and the Germans in 1914. Padoriba wari asida adugumlaba tarik amadi thodok ama palli 1914 gi British ka German ga gi maraki lal. Can you guess which war it was? Karamba makhal gi lal oramgani haiba adom khan mangambara. Swaisida tarik khara piri sigi tarik singsi isana exercise matek ama tawba yai. Hare hauzik wari asi paba haurasi. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport, a roll-top decks. I hangna Bridport haiba lam amagi poti potkum yonba dukan amada thengakibani makhum panba decks ama. Matang asida a roll-top decks hariba decks asi table makhalamani like tongnaba table makhalamani maduda table sigi mathak si makhum panduna sizinnaning matamda hangdoktuna sizinaba aduga sizinaba loiraga khumjalaga thamba yaba adugumba decks makhalamani. Dudi makha parasi. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. Yoliba nupa aduna anganba 19th century gi uyung pambina sabani haina hairaki. I had wanted one, but they were far too expensive. Aina ama pamki adubu hariba makhalgi decks asi yamna atangba makhalama oiramki. This one was in a bad condition. The roll top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scorch marks all down one side. Hoziki sidi fivam pattana lairamki, makhong amana mawong marin tadana samlamki, nakal amadana maina chakhibagi mami tarami. It was going for very little money. Yamna hongna yolami. I thought I could restore it. Aina fazana semjalagi khanki. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to pay it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it. Semba ngamdabasu yai, sembasu lugadawribani, adubu masi ai laidaba yade. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. Aina nupaduda paisa thiramlaga aigi garage maningda laiba thabak tawnaba ka tamna purakhi. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. Aina Christmas Eve numitta decks adu semba hauki. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. Aina makhum adu pulap lauthoki aduga drawers singdu chingthoki. The veneer had lifted almost everywhere. Mafam khudingmakta upak singdu fakatlaga lairami. It looked like water damage to me. Aina madu isingna sokhanba manki. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on these decks. Mai amadi ising animakna decks adu sokhankibani haibadu tasengna uki. The last drawer was stuck fast. Aroibagi drawer adu panduna lairamki. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. Aina tapna chingthoknaba hotnaba yaba hotnaki. In the end, I used brute force. Poloidadi nampu safu sisinaki. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath, a secret drawer. Aina kuchepna kanna yaiki maduda drawer adu paithorakpada makhada athenba ahangba mafam ama arotpa drawer ama thengnaki. There was something in there. Maduda karigumba potsak ama yauramki. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Aina khut thinjilaga amuba machugi apikpa yotki kagok ama lauthorai. Sellotaped on the top of it was a piece of lined notepaper and written on it in shaky handwriting, Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915. Mathak aduda sellotapena naptuna line chingba che machet ama maduda nikli lauba khui da irami. Jim gi aroiba chithi fangkiba January gi tarik 15, 1915. To be buried with me when the time comes. Matamna laglaba kanda aiga fuminanaba. I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box. Aihak tawna khanki aihakna kagok adu hangdoklubad lali. But curiosity got the better of my scruples. Adubu aihakna ningjing mangjingnaba adu khangningmanbana henki. It usually does. Asumna adum tawgali. Inside the box there was an envelope. Kagok manungda envelope ama yauramki. The address read, Mistress Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. Laifam adu pathoki, Mistress Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. Aina chithi adu lauthoklaga hangdokki. It was written in pencil and dated at the top, December 26, 1914. Pencilna iramki, tarikna mathakta tharamki, December 26, 1914. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. Khwaidagi nungsirabi Connie, aihakna wakhal yamna nungaina nangonda iri maramdi ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯉꯛꯅꯤꯡꯉꯥꯏ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯔꯕ ꯑꯃ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯇ ꯊꯣꯛꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ꯫ ꯑꯩ ꯅꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯈꯨꯗꯛꯇ ꯇꯝꯗꯕ ꯌꯥꯗ꯭ꯔꯦ꯫ We were all standing to in our trenches yesterday morning, Christmas morning. Ngarang ayuki aikhoi loinamak aikhoigi komda leplami, Christmaski ayukni. It was crisp and quiet all about, as beautiful a morning as I've ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. Ing lauraba taseng-tasenglaba, chiklaba, amukta udriba mawongda fajaraba ayuk oiramki, Christmaski ayukna ingfam thokpa mawongda ingki. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth I'm ashamed to say is that Fritz began it. ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯧꯗꯣꯛꯄꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯅꯉꯣꯟꯗ ꯇꯝꯅꯤꯡꯏ, ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯏꯀꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯉꯥꯏꯅꯤ, ꯑꯁꯦꯡꯕꯗꯤ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯤꯠꯖꯅ ꯍꯧꯗꯣꯔꯛꯄꯅꯤ. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕꯗ ꯀꯅꯥꯅꯣꯃꯅ ꯃꯥꯌꯣꯛꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯀꯣꯝꯗꯒꯤ ꯑꯉꯧꯕ ꯐꯤꯔꯥꯜ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯄ ꯎꯈꯤ. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land, "Happy Christmas, Tommy! Happy Christmas!" ꯃꯄꯨ ꯅꯥꯏꯗ꯭ꯔꯕ ꯈꯠꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯐꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯅꯥꯀꯜ ꯑꯗꯣꯝꯗꯒꯤ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯂꯥꯎꯔꯛꯈꯤ, "ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯔꯕ ꯈ꯭ꯔꯤꯁꯃꯥꯁ, ꯇꯣꯃꯤ! ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯔꯕ ꯈ꯭ꯔꯤꯁꯃꯥꯁ!" When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, "Same to you, Fritz! Same to you!" ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯉꯛꯄꯗꯨ ꯐꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯥꯎꯈꯤ, "ꯅꯈꯣꯏꯗꯁꯨ ꯅꯨꯡꯉꯥꯏꯔꯕ ꯈ꯭ꯔꯤꯁꯃꯥꯁ, Fritz! ꯅꯈꯣꯏꯗꯁꯨ!" I thought that would be that. We all did. ꯑꯩꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨꯅ ꯂꯣꯏꯔꯕꯣꯏ ꯅꯤꯡꯉꯤ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯝꯅ ꯈꯟꯈꯤ. But then, suddenly, one of them was up there in his great coat and waving a white flag. ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯛꯇꯒꯤ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯎꯠ ꯃꯆꯨꯒꯤ ꯀꯣꯠ ꯂꯤꯠꯇꯨꯅ ꯑꯉꯧꯕ ꯐꯤꯔꯥꯜ ꯍꯥꯏꯗꯨꯅ ꯂꯦꯞꯈꯠꯂꯛꯈꯤ. "Don't shoot, lads!" someone shouted. "Kapkanu nupamcha sa!" Kanamanomana laurakhi. And no one did. Kanamatana kapkhide. Then there was another fridge up on the parapet and another. Fridge amaga komgi nakanda khagaliba aduda lepkhalakhi, adudagi amagasu lepkhalakhi. "Keep your heads down," I told the man. "It's a trick," but it wasn't. Nakoksingdo nonthau aina aigi misingda haikhi. Namthakni masi, adubu namthak oiramde. One of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. German amana makok mathakta bottle ama hairami. "It is Christmas Day, Tommy. We have snaps. We have sauces. We meet you, yes?" "Christmas numitne, Tommy. Aikhoida yu yauri. Aikhoida angauba sa mayom yauri. Aikhoi noiga unase, yabro." By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land, and not a rifle between them. Matam asidadi makhoi tarani thoimuk aikhoi romda khatnariba mafam lanthokduna laklami. Nongmai amatta paiduna. Little Private Morris was the first up. Little Private Morris na ihan hana thoklakhi. "Come on, boys, what are you waiting for? Come on, boys, what are we waiting for? Lao nupamsa sa." And then there was no stopping them. Adudagidi moibu thingbinaba kana amata laikhidre. I was the officer. Aina makhoigi officer oiramki. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. Aina makhoigi officer oiramki. Aina makhoibu khamamgadawbani mafam aduda matam aduda adubu tasengbadi aina khamamdawni haiba sumkhan fauba khalude. For hours I could see men walking slowly towards one another, grey coats in the middle. ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯛꯇ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯍꯥꯛꯅ ꯎꯈꯤ ꯅꯨꯄꯥꯁꯤꯡ tapna tapna amagi manakta changsinaki ut machugi coat singa sanglainaba machugi coat singa mayaiduda unaki. And I was one of them. Aduga aisu makoigi marakta ama oiramki. Aisu maduda saruk yaramki. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. Lal adugi maraktuda aikoina santi oina lainaki. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the fleet officer who approached me, hand outstretched. Nang bapna fauba lamba ngamloi khwaidagi nungsirabi Connie. Aina faukibado fleet officer dugi mamittuda yenglubada. Makut tingthoklaktuna aingonda changsilakpada. Hans Wolf, he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. Hans Wolf, mahakna haiki. Khut asibu taramna paiduna. I am from Dusseldorf. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. I Dusseldorf tagini orchestra da aihak cello khongbani nungairaba Christmas. Captain Jim McPherson, I replied. And a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Aduga nangsu nungairaba Christmas. I school ozani Dorset tagi England gi maninglomdagi. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. Ah, Dorset, mahakna nokfet tawduna. I know this place. I know it very well. I khangi madugi mafamdo. I fazana khangi. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sauces, and we talked, Connie. Oh, how we talked. Aikhoi yuga sa angoba mayonga chaminare. Aduga aikhoi wari sanaki Connie. Karamna wari sanaki aikhoi. He spoke almost perfect English. Ma English fazana chumna lonki. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. Adubu mahak Dorset ta amukta laklamdri, England da fauba amukta laklamdri. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in English. Mana England gi maramda khangliba mayamdu school da tamlakpa ngaktani, English ta iba lyric sing pabadagini. His favorite writer was Tommy Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. Magi khwaidagi pamjaba aibadi Thomas Hardy. Magi khwaidagi pamjaba lyricna Far from the Meddling Crowd. Magi khwaidagi pamjaba aibadi Thomas Hardy. Magi khwaidagi pamjaba lyricna Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. Mapu naidraba khatnariba mafam aduda aikoina Bathsheba, Gabriel Oak, Sergeant Troy amadi Dorset ki maramda wari sanaki. He had a wife and one son born just 6 months ago. Magi nupi ama lairamki, tha tarukta ngairiba macha nupa amaga lairamki. As I looked about me, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere, all over no man's land, smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. Aina akoibada koina yengbada khaki gi ut machugi pulap mafam khudingmakta lairami. Khanariba mafam du pik thalami. Churup thaktuna, noktuna, wari sanaduna, yu thaktuna, chaminaduna lairami. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of our wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. Hans Wolf ka aigana nangi hauraba Christmas ki cake tugi arembadu chaminaki, Connie. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. I agreed. Mana aduk hauraba marzipan amukta chadri khanki aisu yaninki. We agreed about everything and he was my enemy. Hiram khudingmakta ibani yanaki aduga aigi yeknaba oirami. Matang asida aibana hainingibasi maga hojiki thengnakhiba mahaki yeknaba lanmi aduga sanakiba wari khudingmakta mabaini yanaki. Marai turai taunakhiba laite loinamak hairuba sanaruba wari khudingmak yanaki. Mabani yeknaba oitarabasu khudingmakta yanakhi haibaduni. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. Adugumlaba Christmas party amukta thengnadri, Connie. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Adudagidi kanano di khanghaudre, maduna football puthoraki. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts, and the next thing we knew it was Tommy against Fritz out in the middle of no man's land. Lonjinaraga goalposting semle, adudagidi Tommyga Fritzka khatnariba mafamdugi mayaiduda football match taunaki. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapped our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. Hans Wolf ka aigana yengduna harauna lauki, kuba kuduna kong tinduna ingbadu fananaba. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. Mikup amada aihangna uki aikhoigi sorsingdu aikhoigi marakta nungsitta tinkibadu. Matangsida ayibaga mahakna thengnaruba yeknabadugi mabanina faminaduna nokminaduna lairingai matang aduda ingthamthagi ayuknina sor honbadu ising manindu ubadu mabainigi maraktuda mabainigi sor anidu nungsittuda tinkibadu ubowi madugi scenery duni matang asida describe tawribase. He saw it too and smiled. Jim McPherson, he said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve the war. I think this is how we should resolve this war, a football match. No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. Masu uraduna noglaki. Jim McPherson, mana ngahak lairaga haraki. Aina khanbada lal asi asumna football match tawduna loisingadabani khali. Football match tadi kanamatta side, angang amatta mapa mama laitraba onde, nupi amatta lukrabi onde. I prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. Aidi cricket oina pami, aina mangonda haiki. Adu oiradi aikoi Tommy singna soidana kaba yai. Ibani magnoki. We laughed at that and together we watched the game. Ibani magnoki punna game adu yengminaki. Sad to say, Connie, Fritz won 2-1. Tambada nungaite Connie, Fritz nakaki, goal anina amada. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. Adubu Hans Wolf na pukchel chawna hairaki, aikhoigi goal post adu nakhoidudagi pakpa heli, aduna game adu niyom chungkide. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, the snaps and the rum and the sauces had long since run out. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, the snaps and the rum and the sauces had long since run out, and we knew it was all over. Matam laki ikhang khanghodana game adusu loisinki, yuga sa angoba mayom singdusu loina loiki, aikoi loinamak loire haiba khangki. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family soon again, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. Aina Hanspu nungairo haiki aduga masu mahaki imung manung singa thuna unaba oirasanu aduga khanabasisu thuna loiba oirasanu aduga aikoi loinamak yumda hanba oirasanu haina haiki. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. Aina khanbada maduni khalli lanmi khudingmakna pamliba nakal animakta, Hans Wolf na hairaki. Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. Checksina layu, Jim McPherson. Ai mikup asi sungkaw kauba ngamlaroi nangbusu. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. Mana salute piramlaga iya yaningdana tapna aingondagi chatkibadu aingondasu fahowi. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of gray-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. Mahakna onthoktuna amuktang khut hairami aduga ut machugi nupa chamamukki maraktuda tinduna makhoigi komlomda chatki. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. Madugi nungdangdu makhoigi komda hanaraba matungda yeknabasingduna makhoigi party singduna still night silent night salakpadu taki yamna fazana su salaki aduga ayibagi party singna while shepherds watched hariba carol asi saki. We exchanged carols for a while and then we all fell silent. Group anidu carol mathang saknaki adudagidi tuminna amuk laiki. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. Aikoina santigi yaifanungaigi matam adu thengnaki. Matam adu punsi chupagi oina latuna layragadaba matamni. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. Khwaidagi nungshirabi Connie, mathanggi chahigi Christmas ki matam yaurakpadadi, masigi lal asi karisu oiraroi, thaplaba, tamthiraba, ningsingma mi natana. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. Aina ngasi thokliba thodoksingbudagi khangki Armina animakna nakal animakta santi kayamuk pambage habado. We shall be together again soon, I am sure of it. Ibani ikuidana amuk hanna punna laiminarani. Aihakna tasengna thazay. Your loving Jim. Nang bunung sizariba Jim. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. Aina chithi adu thupchinki aduga magi envelope ta hapchinki. I kept awake all night. Ay nungdang adu tumdana lenki. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Ayuk oirakpadadi ay kaidogadage haiba ay khangki. I drove into Bridport, just a few miles away. Aina Bridport tana thauki mal kharadang ni lapiba. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. Magi huiga chatlamba nupamcha amada aina Copper Beaches kadaida lay haina hangki. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned-out cell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. House number 12 tadi karimta oiramdre, maina chaklaba yum mama oirami, jinga singdusu loina fakatlami, thongnau singdusu loina fakatlami. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mistress Macpherson. Aina yumthangnabagi thong adu thinduna Mistress Macpherson khangbra haina magi matangda hangki. Oh yes, said the old man in his slippers. Slippers tongduna lairamba ahal amana. Oh yes, khoi khangi haina haraki. He knew her well. Mana Mistress Macpherson bu fazana khanki. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed, but at her age, she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old. Wakal kitang choiraba yamna nungshiraba ahal amani haina haraki. Adubu mahaki chahi matangduda oir adumna oidoba natrani. Chahi chamaga ama sulairami. She had been in the house when it caught fire. Yum adu maina chakpa matamda yum manungduda lairamba zatni. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. Kanamatana tasengna khangde mai adu karam haurakhi haiba adubu candles soidana oiramgani khanki. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. Nupi aduna candle adum sizinaki hai electricity gi mahutta maramdi electricity yamna tangbo oiramki. The fireman had got her out just in time. Matam chana fireman na mahakpu mapanda puthorak pikibani. She was in a nursing home now, he told me, Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of town. Town adugi nakal amaromda laiba Dorchester Road ki Burlington House da nursing home amada nupi adu laiki haina tamlaki. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. Aina Burlington House nursing home adu yamna laina thiba fangki. There were paper chains up in the hallway and a lighted Christmas tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. Chena paring lengduna saba decoration mayam thetuna lairamki makhogi hallway aduga maina ilang lang na thalaba Christmas tree ama corner da lairamki Christmas tree duki mathakta angel amasu thelamki. I said I was a friend come to visit Mistress Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. Aina Mistress Macphersongi marupni haina haiki mahapuna balakpani Christmas present pinanaba haina tamki. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a pepper hat and singing. Aina dining room adu fauduna uki mayam pumnamak chegi tupi uptuna isai saktuna lairamki. The matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. Yum adubu sangliba khwaidagi makok oriba nupi adusu tupi uptuna lairami aibu ubada yamna harauki. She even offered me a mince pie. Mince pie chow haidunasu aingonda pirakhi. She walked me along the corridor. Mahakna corridor adu landuna aiga satminarami. Mistress Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. Mistress Macpherson adu mayamga pulap laiti mahana aigonda haraki. She's rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. Mahak ngasidi tarang ama ichatchatli aduna mahak pothazarasanu haina aikhoina khankibani haina tamlaki. She has no family, you know, no one visits, so I'm sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. Mahak se family amata laite khangaba kanamta lakte aduna nangbu ubada yamna thina haraugani. Asumna nupiduna hairaki. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. Nupi aduna aibu manamasing thafam ka tamna pusinki. Lina saba chokrising amadi gamlada thaba pambi mayamna ikoi koina laiba ka aduda aibu thamlamki. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. Ahal adu chakra panba chokri amada makhut lonaduna phamduna lairami. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. Nupi adu pokna thallaba masam adu sambun punduna lairami. She was gazing out at the garden. Mahak laikolda yengduna lairami. Hello, I said. Ahangna hello haina haiki. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. Mahangna aingonda ongkhatuna tarangamada yenglaki. Happy Christmas, Connie, I went on. I found this. I think it's yours. As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. Nungaraba Christmas, Connie, Ahangna haiki. Aina si fanglakibani si nangi oiramale. Ahangna wanganlingai matamda mahakna mifam hongdana aingonda yenglaki. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. Aina yotki cargo adu hangdoktuna mangonda piki. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. Mikup to the pot adu masakhangladuna mahaki mamit adu langkhalaki. Aduga mahaki maithong aduda khangnungungaibagi mangala mafauraki. I explained about the decks, about how I had found it, but I don't think she was listening. Aina decks adu gi matangda phajana explain tauki karamna phanglaki ge haibadu adubu mahangna tasinakide. For a while she said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. Mahak karimta haidana ngahak lairami adubu chithi adubu yamna nushina nalami. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Ikhang khangawdana mahakna makhut tingtholakduna aigi khutpu pairakhi. Her eyes were filled with tears. Mahaki mamit adu mapira chenkhi. You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest, she said. Nangna Christmas matamda halakhini haiba natra khwaidagi nungsiraba, mahakna haikhi. And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down. Aduga nang hauzik sida laire, khwaidagi faraba Christmas ki khudol, inakta changsila u nungsiraba Jim phamu. I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. Aina manakta phamthaki aduga mahakna khajaida chublakhi. I read your letters so often, Jim, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you're back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. I nangi chithidu yam toina pai Jim nintigi. Wakhalda aina nangi khonjel yamna taningki. Masina nangbu inakta laibagum fawanki. Aduga hauzikti nang sida laire. Hauzikti nang halakle. Nang nasana aingonda pabirakpa yare. Amukta pabigera nungsiraba Jim. Ai nangi khonjel adu amukka hanna taningi. Ai madu yamna nungaigani. Adudagi ibani cha khara thaksi. Aina nangi hauraba Christmas cake marzipan semlaga lairabani. Ai nang nan marzipan adukki matik pamjabadu khangi. Asumna wakhal choirabi ahal aduna chithi adubu thilakpa lakliba ayiba adubu magi halakhidraba nupa aduni khanki. Wakhal aduna nungaijaraduna madubu khwaidagi faraba Christmas ki khudolni haina haiki. Video asi karam tawbibage comment soidna pibiyu. If you like the video, don't forget to put a thumbs up. Chapter mathang hapcharake soidna subscribe tawbiyu. Imarol tutorial.